So I have created my own DiscoArt bot. It lets you create images based on a prompt. Not much new since 2022, but there are some interesting things about this one that makes this bot quite a little bit more peculiar. This video is a little bit different than what you're used to. It's new to me as well. I've never been standing like this with a mic in my hand, but I feel kind of in the vibe. So we'll see how it goes. I'm glad you're all here, and we're going to take a look in what happened, what was the development, what led up to this project, and some of the thought process that went into designing this. So I hope you all enjoy, and let's take this journey together. Hey, Dragons Not Peculiarities, how did you all sleep? Special welcome to those that are new here. A couple of months ago, I released the DiscoArt bot privately in my own small Discord server. It wasn't based on the bot that you're going to see today, but it was based on another algorithm called latent diffusion. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but at the time, it was one of the best models and algorithms that you can get that was public and could be run on a single RTX 3080. This is one of my GPUs that I have laying around here, so that was a really good start. It was a vital part of the community. I could tell my server really loved it. What did I do? I took it away. Because I'm really stupid. I was thinking that I could improve the entire algorithm in like 3 days. To be honest, I was a little bit arrogant. I had a few research projects that really worked out in my way, and I felt like I could do anything. 3 days turned into a week, into 2 weeks, into 3 weeks, and eventually the bot never resurfaced. So I felt a little bit bad, and while I was lying in bed, I was thinking, what can I do to make it up with the entire server? So I got one interesting idea. I bring the bot back better. And that's when I came across Disco Diffusion and its fork called DiscoArt, made by Xiao. Disco Diffusion, much like DiscoArt, are Python notebooks that you can configure a vast amount of variables and enter a prompt and get results. They are very different from, say, DALL-E, which basically allows you to enter a prompt and get an image. In this case, you can tune so many things that you can absolutely make art pieces unlike anything I've ever seen. I really loved the fantasy aspect that this thing has. It was only logical and obvious to me that my next DiscoArt bot would be based on this. In the first week of development, I was mainly learning about DiscoArt. The main difference between DiscoArt and Disco Diffusion is that DiscoArt is a far more modern interface. It's integrated with Jina AI, which has a few server features that really are handy. In any case, in the week I learned about the APIs, I read the source code, I tried to understand things, I tried to create pull requests, I tried to interact with the developers, try to see if I fit into all of this and if I can actually contribute something that would be useful. Because unlike the last bot, I wanted this one to be public. Of course, I run a single RTX 3080, so I can't run everyone's bot, but I can make it open source and let other people host it for their servers. You know, the more people that can use this, the merrier. So this is only awesome. The reason why my previous bot wasn't open source, by the way, had nothing to do with secrecy or anything like that. I just didn't feel like other people would want it. Also, it was integrated in a much larger bot that I'm using in my server, so having to open source that one thing also meant open sourcing the rest, which I think nobody really wants. So, yeah. But this bot is completely independent of my own bots. It's open source, and you can basically run it on any server you want. So, the first week has passed, and now it was time to work on it. There were a few design principles that I kept in mind while working on my Disco Diffusion bot. While DiscoArt and Disco Diffusion are way more powerful than DALL-E, where you can configure everything you want, the sheer amount of configuration that you can do might be overwhelming to beginning users. So I wanted to make the user interface as simple as possible, but also let people that are more novice about this still tune their prompts and everything that they want to do. To accommodate for all of this, I created a feature called presets. One of the presets is the standard preset, which works the best with realistic photos. But if you want to do, for instance, pixel art, you might be better off with the pixel art preset. We have a system that if the user types a certain prompt that might be working better with another preset than standard, we will opt the user to switch to that preset. For instance, if you type the word pixel art or some similarity to that in your prompt, then the bot will offer you to use the pixel art preset instead. This will be much more useful for people that don't want to learn all of these different things. And this will make the Disco diffusion system much more useful for beginners, but still as customizable as for novice users, because they can still override the values in those presets. So they are not forced to work in boxes. These presets are created using a thing that's called hyperparameter search. So I made some tiny changes to the script from DiscoArt and let a machine learn about every single configuration parameter. It's not like brute forcing. It's more like trying random stuff and create some kind of space in where you can see what works better or not. Because I run only one RTX 3080, it's very easy for users to get all gobbled up, especially if you have those active members that will write tons and tons of prompts, which means that new users who might be interested in this technology might have to wait a really long time before they can actually test it out. So I created what I call the fairness queue, which really is just a copy from my old bot, where one member can only write one prompt and wait, which means that the next user can always go next in line. This queue is configurable for every server and every person that hosts this bot. So if you have a lot of hardware and you want to make sure that people can do a lot more than just one prompt at a time, feel free. Bob's your uncle. The first thing is it had to be fast. And this is where we come in again with the trade-off between quality and speed. Latent diffusion, what my previous bot was based on, is really freaking fast. You can generate like 4 images, or like even, I think 4 by 4 images. You can just create really fast. It's insane. I think it takes like 30 seconds maybe. To put it simply, latent diffusion doesn't have to convert image data back to pixels and then back into its diffusion algorithm. What latent diffusion does, it uses some kind of latent space which is far smaller than pixel data. This is unlike Disco diffusion that still uses this kind of stuff. It might seem primitive, but the reason why they do that is because this will allow them to do this kind of customization. So one of the things is, for instance, weighted prompts. You can enter not 1, but 2 or 3 or 4 prompts, and you can attach weights to them, which means that you can also attach a negative weight to them, which means that if you don't want a certain thing in your image, you can rule it out. And those kind of things are not possible with latent diffusion, at least not that I know of. The problem is that Disco diffusion is slow. And actually, it's pretty fast compared to standards, but it's slow. Like for a normal user, it's slow. I talked to multiple bot developers, and they didn't want to integrate Disco diffusion because it's so slow. Users want instant gratification. It's like if you have an oven and it doesn't have a window, or a microwave without a window, you just have to wait, which is boring. But if there's a little window in there, you can actually see what's happening. And that's the first clue that I had. So I made a real-time view for your images. So it still takes more time than latent diffusion, but you can actually see your images forming. That's super useful, and it keeps the user occupied while they're waiting. Another thing that I did was I tried to downscale the diffusion models, which means that instead of creating these giant images, I create these smaller images. And these smaller images are way faster to generate. This sped up a lot, but it was also quite a challenge because these diffusion models are simply not made for smaller resolutions. Anything under 512 by 512, it's just completely oversaturated. So I tried multiple things. I tried to randomly find configurations that work better and then human review them. Some worked, some didn't. It really depended on the prompt. Then I tried this hyperparameter search where I literally took an image generated with the prompt, shrunk it down to 256 to 256, and then let the diffusion model generate another image on 256 by 256, compared it to my saved image, and depending on how far away it was from each other, the loss would go up or down, and it had to find a new configuration. I was looking for 3 days. My laptop was running, and it was blowing away, and I just couldn't find one solution. Like, there were a few that worked, but then other prompts didn't again, so it felt really risky. Eventually, I gave up and opted for 512 by 512. Another thing that we did was tuning the configuration so that it was as fast as possible. This was, again, quite a challenge, and we resorted to the hyperparameter search for this. This means that the quality from my images are a little bit lower than that of Disco diffusion or DiscoArt, but it's hardly worth mentioning You only notice it when you compare them side by side. Another thing I was thinking about was using latent diffusion to generate images at 256 by 256, then use that as an initializer for the disco diffusion and then upscale. However, this would only work if you don't use weighted prompts, since latent diffusion doesn't support weighted prompts. So if I were to go with that solution, I would have to completely eliminate the weighted prompts feature, which really removes a vital feature of disco diffusion. So that's something we didn't do. Eventually I gave up and resorted to generating images at 512 by 512, which seemed to be the absolute borderline of how far you can go while still retaining a high image quality. Of course, 512 by 512 is already a pretty high resolution for such an algorithm, but we wanted to go even higher, so we included an upscale feature, which you can use after you've generated your images. Combining it all together, it looks much like a clone of Midjourney, but nothing seems farther from the truth. I just really liked the user interface of Midjourney, so I saw no reason not to copy it. If it's good and it works and it's perfect, why not? The two major things currently different about it is that Midjourney has a parameter system where you basically type 2 times dash followed by the name of the parameter you wanted to tune. You have to resort to documentation in order to read all of the things. This, again, is not very user-friendly, especially not for beginners, but I guess they can get a pass here because they already are pretty beginner-friendly. So this is pretty nice for advanced people, but for beginners the quality is of course good enough. So what I did was I used optional parameters in DiscoArt, which means that you can type any parameter you like, see the description without ever having to leave DiscoArt, either on your phone or on the desktop. So this makes exploring these values a little bit more easy. Another thing that I added was the variate feature. If you like something that you see, you can click variate and it will generate images much like them, but a little bit more different. It's almost like stepping in a parallel universe at will. So let's talk about the features that we want to have in the near future. One of the features is I want to try to see if we can find a public way to host this bot. It's not really a feature, but I hope to find a hosting partner for this bot, which means that it can run 24/7 and is more public. I am still looking for options. I hope I don't have to go to Amazon and pay for all of this because the rent of GPU is extremely high. And for something that I won't make money out of, it's a pretty prohibitive cost, really. The second feature I really like to see is more diffusion models. So right now we only have the default diffusion model and the pixel art, but there's going to be more like portrait and God knows what else is going to be out there. The minimum resolution we can go to before we start to lose image quality is 512 by 512. This is still a little bit slow. Right now my single GPU can render about 4 images in 3 minutes time. This is considered really fast in the disco diffusion and DiscoArt world, but still pretty slow for users who really like to see instant results. And after I gave up, I still had a lot of ideas to try this, but you know, I've been working on this forever and this new bot will never see the light of day, which would be quite a shame. So my research ended at this part. I was guiding the diffusion model to generate a small image, 256 by 256, based on a large image created at 1024 by 1024. And I was guiding it based on that real image that was good. And it couldn't do it. That learned me one thing. Even if you have the right data, if a diffusion model is not made to do a certain thing, it won't do it. So the best thing to do here was, for me at least, to see if we can transfer learn these larger diffusion models to generate smaller images so that they will be able to be used at smaller resolutions. And that would really help to generate faster, smaller, still good looking images that the user can then human review and upscale whenever they like something. There are more features that I have in mind, but these features are so futuristic, so insane. I haven't even begun researching them yet. They're just in my mind and I don't dare to say them on video because I don't want to create too much hype. And finally, there was one design consideration I forgot to mention. It's that the bot is fully agnostic. Right now, of course, it only relies on DiscoArt, but in the future, I really like to see to integrate multiple diffusion models and mix and match them together. Instead of focusing on a single algorithm, it will be more like a portal where users can use a single user-friendly interface to try all of these things without being overwhelmed by all of its features. So that was it for this video. Be sure to leave a comment and a like if you did. And of course, this project is open source, so the GitHub link will be in the description below. If you're going to bed, of course, Nini Drag is not a peculiarities. I'm going to bed early. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.